President Buhari receives former South African President Thabo Mbeki, reiterates his commitment in fighting corruption.
Party primaries in states top agenda at meeting between President Buhari and governors of all Progressives Congress states.
Our party believes in justice, equity, and fairness, and we are requesting that let the right thing be done.
National Judicial Council recommends the dismissal of 2 judges.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall look at the challenges and prospects of the teaching profession.
Teaching profession has always been one of the most respected in the whole world. In Nigeria, this profession was very honorable, especially during the colonial era. But Kingsley, it was not just during the colonial era, but several years after that, in the 70s and early 80s. I still recall how my father was revered in communities where he taught, and in fact, he was also involved in settling community crises. Disputes, yes. And that goes to show that it's just beyond the classroom.
There's no doubt about that, Kirian. And at that time that you are referring to, the teaching profession was given special attention in society. Teacher was a prestigious and respected post.
And that's true indeed. Teachers were engaged not only in the education of children, but also in inculcating moral and ethical qualities in the society.
But of course, that is no longer the case. And the teaching profession, as it were, has come under serious criticism in recent times, with the critics saying that teachers lack the necessary qualities to groom students.
Now, the profession is often regarded as a dumping ground with no respect for the teacher, as they are often viewed with contempt.
Well, it is in this light that the United Nations Education and Scientific Cultural Organization, UNESCO, set aside today, that's the 5th of October, every year to recognize, educate, assess, and improve the quality of teachers, a set of people regarded as educators of the world.
UNESCO adopted the theme, the right to education, means the right to a qualified teacher as the theme for this year's celebration. It also commemorates the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948.
Well, that's not all, Kirian. This year's theme also serves as a reminder that the right to education cannot be realized without trained and qualified teachers.
How do we improve the quality of teachers? What are the challenges and prospects of the teaching profession? This is our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today, the last for the week. My name is Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us.
And Kirian, of course, you recall yesterday, one of the 2 topics that we had in our conversation segment had to do with the phenomenon of out-of-school children. We are seeing the numbers pushing up from what it was about 10.5 million to about 20.5 million. And one of the key issues that came up, of course, had to do with both the demand side and the supply side.
Exactly.
How to reduce incrementally the number of out-of-school children. And part of the issue with the supply side has to do with the qualified teachers, and who are also motivated by way of having their remuneration paid regularly. We know the phenomenon of teachers being owed.
And if you recall yesterday on this program, when Dr. Boboyi of the UBE recalled that it was in the NPN era of the early 80s that teachers' career pummeled in this country.
Unfortunately, yes, we started seeing teachers being owed several months, and of course on the Instant Republic, that's the Fourth Republic, we have seen cases of teachers going on for upwards of 24 months, in some cases not even earning their salary. And this was why the federal government at some point took the drastic step of deducting as source the emoluments of teachers from the outgoings, from the outgoings to the local governments. But of course, there was a judicial decision that struck that down, and teachers continue to face, to the era of unpaid salaries and so on and so forth. The teaching profession is a noble one. All of us went through teachers, and our children have also gone through teachers.
Going through teachers. Some of us participated in teaching. I recall when we used to have auxiliary teachers. When you have a good result after your WAEC exams, you are allowed to teach in the lower class in secondary school, for instance.
Probably on level 4, man. Grade level 4. That's what. So if you were qualified and certified as a teacher with a teacher's grade 2 certificate, you kicked off your career on grade level 5.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the issue we're looking at this morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Kieran and also welcome you to the program and wishing Nigerian teachers happy Teachers' Day as they join their counterparts around the world to commemorate the day for teachers. And as usual in the course of the program, we have our complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's join our other colleague to take the highlights of the news. And here is Anne Jibuno. Hi, Anne.
Hello, Kingsley and Kieran. Good morning. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says fighting corruption in Nigeria is not only a must, but non-negotiable if the country is to realize her potentials for greatness. The president stated this while receiving the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, on a courtesy visit. Nigeria's leadership in the fight to stop illicit financial flows out of the continent has been described as an inspiration to other African countries. Former president of South Africa and now the chairman of African Union High-Level Panel on Illicit Financial Flows, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, stated this in Abuja at a special session to review the performance of African countries.
Identify how these outflows take place and to make recommendations as to what might be done.
As a nation, we have succeeded in establishing institutions that are mandated with the statutory role of fight against corruption, fighting corruption, and indeed address it.
Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo has reiterated the commitment of the federal government to introducing more social intervention programs with a view to empowering young Nigerians on profitable entrepreneurial skills acquisition. The Vice President stated this at the 20th edition of the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Clinics in Kaduna.
Today's event, as I've said, is the 20th edition of the clinics. Through the various editions, we have seen inspiring examples of how governments can make a difference in the lives of entrepreneurs by paying attention to them and by demonstrating the political will to unwind the bureaucratic bottlenecks that so frequently face our businesses. MSMEs are also now better informed about the roles that the various federal government agencies regulating their activities play, as well as the incentives available for their benefit.
The National Judicial Council has recommended to the President the dismissal of 2 judges and voluntary retirement of 1 other judge and ordered him to refund 2 years' salary and emolument. This is the outcome of the meeting of the NJC, which also referred the case of a legal practitioner to the disciplinary committee. The judges recommended for dismissal are Justice Ofili Ajumogobia and Justice James Agbaudu Fishim, while Justice Ofili Ajumogobia was dismissed pursuant to findings by the Council on the allegations of misconduct contained in a petition by the acting EFCC chairman, Ibrahim Magu. Justice James Agbaudu Fishim's offense, also as contained in the EFCC chairman's petition, is that he received various sums of money from litigants and lawyers that had cases before him. President Muhammadu Buhari this Thursday held a crucial meeting with some APC governors as tension continues to mount over the conduct of primary elections by the governing party in some states of the Federation.
Our party believes in justice, equity, and fairness, and we are requesting that let the right thing be done and let everyone contest elections.
Meanwhile, a meeting between the national executives and governors of the All Progressives Congress has ended with a resolution that the October 6th date for the party's national convention is sacrosanct despite ongoing primaries.
There are some elements who believe that they can hijack the process and impose their personal preference. We are trying to clean up our political party's eternal democracy and eliminate corruption as much as we can from the process and empower the ordinary party member to have a say and a decisive voice.
There are bound to be issues or challenges in one or two places, but I think because it's a dynamic process, I believe it will be resolved.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has reminded journalists of their critical role in ensuring a peaceful society by exhibiting high levels of professionalism while collaborating with government towards a credible 2019 general election. This was in his message to the opening of the 6th Triennial Delegates Conference of the Nigerian Union of Journalists in Abuja. A visit to Ruga community, where a disease has allegedly left many blind, by officials of the Federal Capital Territory, has revealed that the victims were suffering from conjunctivitis, which is contrary to the anxiety created in the media over the disease.
His blindness is not a blindness, it's not an acute blindness. It's a child that's been blind for over 1 year, and his blindness clearly, obviously, this child suffered from measles, and like from the information the mother gave, they were admitted in Wuse Hospital and eventually in Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital in Shika, on the ophthalmology department. So clearly you can see there's a history, that led to his own blindness. So not as a result of the current situation that they are having. First of all, we are going to treat all of them. We are going to give them antibiotics, to treat the infections. For those that have allergic conditions, we're also going to give them drugs to take care of them for free, of course, from government. But most importantly is the issue of personal hygiene.
Now, the federal government has set December 2019 as a deadline for all serving and prospective teachers to obtain relevant certificates and licenses to be qualified to teach in the country. Minister of State Education, Professor Anthony Onka, at a media briefing on this year's World Teachers' Day, says the measure is to ensure professionalism in education.
No longer registered to practice as teachers unless they pass the prescribed professional qualifying examination conducted by the TRCN. This is in tandem with the international best practices.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kirian at Kingsley after this break.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, business time. The federal government has affirmed its determination to diversify Nigeria's economy to enhance the nation's vast potential. Chimubi Watanaji tells us on business news that it plans to also achieve this through the promotion of local content.
Federal government's drive to achieve a robust economy through the non-oil sector is gaining more grounds by the day. This is as players, especially those in the private sector, are benefiting from the different ease of doing business initiative instituted by the federal government to encourage local and foreign investors. Managing Director and representative of the Dangote Group in Abuja, Hashim Ahmed, stated this in an interview with NTA Business News shortly after the organization had its day at the ongoing Abuja 13th International Trade Fair. He says policies of the federal government has empowered the private sector to harness the nation's rich potentials in generating raw materials needed for their finished product, which has hitherto not been the case. State governments are also replicating the effort of the federal government by providing arable lands for the cultivation of rice, sugar, and tomatoes, among others.
Large-scale production of rice, now we're in the process. We're establishing about 6 million rice milling plants all over the country of capacity that is not less than 100,000 tons. So in that regard, the strategy is for us to not to go into direct farming. We will organize, what they call outgrower scheme.
The theme for this year's fair is enhancing SMEs in agribusiness through innovative technology. And now to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The equities market closed Thursday on a negative note as the NSE All-Share Index dropped by 0.09% to close at 32,423.57 basis points, as against minus 0.79% depreciation recorded previously. Its year-to-date returns currently stands at minus 15.22%. And here are the figures of the other trades. And that's news for now. The program continues. I'm Chimobi Walter Nnaji. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Chimobi Walter Nnaji, for the business stories on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us now is a review of stories in today's newspapers.
And here we have our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyebi. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you,
to Friday's edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, good to see you. We, of course, today we are going straight to the inside pages of the papers that we have to bring out those other stories other than the stories you normally would find on the front pages, although some of the stories have been promoted on the front pages. We are discussing in our conversation segment this morning the role of teachers and how to enhance their quality. So we go to the Punch newspaper on page 39. You have, that's the education section. NUT wants teachers' retirement age at 65. NUT wants teachers' retirement age at 65. That's to say that the Nigerian Union of Teachers is calling on the federal government to review the retirement age. And this call was made by the NUT president, Mr. Mohammed Idris, in Abuja, and that was yesterday at the conference to mark the 2018 World Teachers' Day. So that story is there. Another one is parents are major causes of examination malpractice. That's the other story there from the Punch, and that's on page 39. And you go over to the business and economy of the Punch newspaper. The lead story for the business and economy section of the Punch newspaper on page 27 says federal government generates 3.9 trillion naira tax revenue in 9 months. Federal government generates 3.9 trillion naira tax revenue in 9 months. That's the lead story there in the business and economy section of the Punch newspaper. Curious.
All right, let's turn to the Nigerian pilot. The Nigerian pilot, page 5 of the Nigerian pilot. The headline there says, Obaseki lauds teachers' contributions to state's development. That's on page 5 of the Nigerian pilot. And further down on the same page, we have our anti-corruption fight non-negotiable, Buhari tells Thabo Mbeki, the former South African president, who just visited. And still on the Nigerian pilot, let's turn to page 7 of the Nigerian pilot. It says 10.5 million out-of-school children. Nigeria ranks highest globally, says UNICEF. And that's for the Nigerian pilot. And let me go straight to the New Telegraph now. The New Telegraph, page 6 of the New Telegraph. I have one major story there. NJC sacks Justices Ajumogobia and Abadu. All right, Bayo.
Well, let's start with the war against corruption. President Muhammadu Buhari has declared that for his administration, fighting corruption is non-negotiable. It is a must. he said that the fundamental three issues, security, reviving the economy, and fighting corruption, was emphasized to this former South African President Thabo Mbeki as the reason for which the administration was elected. Mr. Mbeki has the African Union panel on illicit flow from Africa, while Buhari says that when Africa is vigorous with the war against corruption, we will eventually appeal to the conscience of the rest of the world. Mr. Mbeki actually praised President Muhammadu Buhari and said corruption is indeed one of Africa's main challenges that must be responded to. President Buhari, who is the current chairman of the African Union anti-corruption campaign, also emphasized the concern of the whole world to corruption, particularly when he was at the 73rd United Nations General Assembly. Talking about teachers now, teachers are aspiring that their retiring age should be increased. In the civil service, it is at 35 years of service or age 60. In some universities and the judiciary, it is higher than that, and they are also aspiring that they will be retiring at a higher age. Well, the teachers has also been challenged that they have a deadline between now and December 2019 to register and become professionally licensed teachers. The Minister of State for Education, Antonio Aukwa, announced this and said the deadline is December 2013. The license is to be obtained from the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. He said the quality of education has attained global consensus and competition, and therefore, if you are a teacher, you have to be a thorough professional. And one of the things they are doing to ensure that you get licensed as a teacher. In fact, he pointed out categorically that Malaysia has one of the best standard of education, and teachers there are highly paid. Also, the Scandinavian countries, especially in Sweden, only people with first class are admitted to be teachers, and teachers in Sweden are the highest paid in that country. And that accounts for the high quality of the products from their institutions. It's one of the best in the world.
Now, talking about licensing teachers for them to operate, what are they going to be categorized? Because we have primary school teachers, secondary school teachers, and
certainly the Teachers Registration Council, as indicated, will have its criteria for registering teachers. So teaching will not be an all-comers affair. In fact, there is a challenge because there is a shortage, massive shortage of teachers compared to the quantum of schools that we have. So much so that there is part of the policy that members of the National Youth Service Corps are substantially deployed to schools to go and teach. What will become of that now if you have to be licensed before you are allowed to teach?
Well, the issue is not so much about licensing. Of course, as we said, that's our discussion later on the program. It's not so much about licensing. It has to do with the quality of the persons who are presenting themselves to be registered and thereby licensed to become teachers. What are the training facilities available for teachers in the first instance for you to obtain your certificate? And after you obtain your certificate and then you get registered, what further training programs do you have access to ensure that your quality improves from time to time? Because the curriculum for teachers, gets altered from time to time on account of modern technology intrusion and so on and so forth. So that's one leg of it. The other leg, of course, also has to do with motivation. Motivation for teachers. You certify teachers, and then what happens?
Yeah, well, I think that should be training and retraining if that is going to work. But I think from all indications, they have to be licensed first to qualify for such training, to now give you the quality that we're talking about. Because many people have already passed through teaching institutions, and graduated. And these are the set of people now that are required to be licensed before they can.
I think there should be a system for which you get licensed. They will look at your qualification and of specificity to teaching before they license.
The reason I'm saying this, Bayo and Kyria, we know this is it's not the ideal, and indeed everybody quarrels with the phenomenon. If you were to go to the streets in Abuja this morning, as indeed everywhere in the country, and you stop motorists, a number of them, most of them will have their driver's licenses on them. But how many of them, in fact, understand the rudiments
of driving.
On the highway?
Yes, of good driving habits.
That's for another day. But let us round off this segment by
You know,
looking
just
at the
before we take
editorials.
that, no, before we take the
for today.
editorial, that's one or two other stories from the Guardian newspaper. Again, this is from the inside, page 4. It says, reckless drivers, that's what I was just referring to. Reckless drivers killed 74 FROSC, that's Federal Road Safety Corps officials, in 18 months. And Commission seeks higher fines for phone users on wheels.
Yes, in fact, the FRS is proposing that they want to put forward a legislation to the National Assembly to increase the fine for driving and phoning, from 50 to between 50 to 50,000 to 100,000.
Okay, let's go to the editorials for this morning. From the New Telegraph newspaper, weapons proliferation and 2019 polls. Now, let's read through some. The increasing proliferation of small and light weapons in Nigeria ahead of the 2019 general election is the issue which continues to drive chilling fever down the spine of many stakeholders in all sectors of the country in recent time. Giving unmistakable credence to this illicit inflow of light weapons, a couple of months ago, the United Nations Center for Peace and Disarmament revealed that out of the 500 million illegal weapons in circulation in West Africa, Nigeria accounts for 70%, accounting to 350 million light weapons.
Yes, it's always been said, the United Nations said about 500 million illegal small arms and light weapons are circulating in this sub-Saharan Africa, and 350 million are in Nigeria. And also you recall that in recent times, there have been instances where pump action guns were seized by members of the custom. There was another instance where about 300,000 cartridges were seized through illegal import through Benin Republic. And of recent, a ship that was heading for Nigeria from Russia was said to be loaded with explosives and armaments. They were heading for Nigeria. What for? So these are the concerns. And the editorial is happened on the fact that if we go back to the last election in 2015, about 70 persons were killed during the period of the elections. And if you go back to 2003, 2007, and 2011, there have always been a high casualty of violence during elections. And this is why the editorial is centering on it that the National Assembly itself should consider strong legislation about small arms and light weapons. That the kind of flash impetuses taken by the security. You recall that of recent, the police has said if you had a license and a hard weapon, surrender them because they were mopping up weapons. It went some way to retrieve some of these weapons, but a substantial part of it has still been in possession of them.
Especially hoodlums.
Yes.
And
that's
part
of what we are seeing now in the lead up to the 2019 elections. It's very significant. Already with the primaries, we see some instances of violence in some parts of the country.
Here and there.
So we just hope that all of that can be contained going forward. Bayo Toyobi, thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you indeed.
On Monday, enjoy your weekend. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll continue with our program with focus on teachers and teaching.
Now, thank you for staying with us up to this moment on Good Morning Nigeria, and to kickstart our conversation on challenges and prospects of the teaching profession as World Teachers Day is being commemorated. Let's take this background report put together by Kunle Adeyeye.
The teaching profession in Nigeria has been confronted with many criticisms, but these criticisms have brought about needed changes in the profession. Over time, critics of the teaching profession in Nigeria have said teachers lack the necessary qualities to groom students in various subject areas, and this has negatively impacted the standard of education in the country. For instance, there are scenarios where standards are not adhered to when teachers are admitted into the profession, and certification is also not given proper attention. This issue is believed to have aided the engagement of unqualified personnel into the profession and ultimately eroded the standard of teaching profession. As part of measures targeted at addressing this issue, the federal government recently gave a 2018 deadline for unqualified personnel in the profession to update their qualification. Other issues such as poor remuneration resulting in low motivation have often been given as the reasons for the rather low standard of living many Nigerian teachers are confronted with. These factors have contributed to the low self-esteem displayed by some teachers in Nigeria, and many often complain of being trapped in the profession. The Nigerian Union of Teachers and other agencies that have put up advocacy to properly reposition teaching as a profession have expressed concern over the issues confronting teachers in the country. Many in Nigeria have different opinions about the teaching profession. Some regard it as a profession for people who lack ambition. The situation is worsened by the lingering socio-economic and political issues in Nigeria. This situation has compelled teachers to demand full professionalization of teaching, better conditions of service, prompt payment of gratuities and pensions, and proper public recognition for teachers. Another issue is the higher teacher-pupil ratio. Beyond these, the United Nations Education on Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO has recommended that 26% of a nation's budget be devoted to education, a development that will help the sector, and teaching being a vital aspect would also benefit. October 5 has been set aside as World Teachers' Day, aimed at giving better recognition to teachers. This year's focus is the right to education means the right to a qualified teacher. When and how can these challenges confronting teaching Nigeria be addressed? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide answers shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for the background. I'm here with us in the Abuja studios to discuss the challenges and prospects of the teaching profession. We have Professor Garba Azare, he's Director General of the National Teachers Institute, which is based in Kaduna. Professor Azare, pleasure to have you on Good
Thank
Morning.
you very much. Pleasure.
Also here with us in the studios is the Dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of Abuja. That's Professor Ashom Mesamari. I got that right, I believe.
You did. Thank you very much.
Professor Mesamari, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Comrade Nwankwo Kevin, he is a National Deputy President, Nigerian Union of Teachers. He's also here with us this morning. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Happy
World Teachers Day.
Yes, let us also welcome Adamu Anjuki Bello, Acting Director of Professional Operations Department, Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us this morning on the program.
Thank you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we kicked off this program recalling the glorious days of the teaching profession. And every now and then, it's usually a state of lamentation with regard to what the teaching profession has become. But is it necessarily the case? Is teaching as horribly neglected as it's often painted, and as teachers as miserable as they're often presented by the rest of society? Let's begin with Professor Azare.
Well, good morning. I think I wouldn't think that the teaching profession is as it is the way it is painted, because I'm sure over the years the teaching profession has undergone a lot of transformation, especially here in Nigeria. There has been a lot of introduction of innovations and other activities to make the teaching profession really a profession, because of the need to compete globally by our own teachers, and also to perform very creditably right here at home. So even if we say the teaching profession has suffered a lot of neglect on the part of the society at large, I think the activities that have taken place has made the teaching profession to be transformed into a gradually developing profession, which will definitely stand the test of time. If you look at the teachers themselves, there is a lot of improvement in terms of their qualification, desire for higher qualification in order to be able to compete favorably. And on the part of the government and the part of the other agencies, there has been a lot of innovation introduced into the teaching profession to really make it a profession, a lot of capacity building, professional development, and other activities related to the educational sector. And there are various organizations like the Teachers Registration Council, which is now providing the guidelines for the teachers to become professional. So all this, I think, are transforming the teaching profession in Nigeria into really a very good profession, rather than looking at it the miserable way we have been looking at it.
All right, thank you. Professor Azare, we will return to you to clarify certain issues that you have raised concerning the level the teaching profession has attained in recent times. Because, of course, we were making comparison, Kisla and I, on what the state of teachers were in several years ago. Now, let's turn to Nwankwo Kevin now. Now, let's get your own view on the state of affairs of teaching profession as of today. You are a teacher. Now, what is your view on the present state of teaching profession, sincerely speaking?
Yes, sincerely speaking, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I think I may differ a bit from what the professor has said, because we wear this shoe, you know where it pinches at the lower level of it. I know a professor is a lecturer in the university, but when you now go down to the primary and secondary schools that give you the product you use in your universities, you discover that it is not the way that teachers were perceived to be in the olden days that they are now. I can agree, professionally they are developing, academically they are acquiring more certificates, but what of the perception the society have about teachers and teaching? They are looked down as peasants, you know, that does not worth much. Maybe as we go on, I'll give you several examples to buttress this point.
Go ahead.
Where a teacher in the school might punish a child, the parents, because of their position in the society, will come clamping on the teacher. That is certainly reducing his status as that person who gives the skill and the knowledge to the child. Of course, next day that such a child maybe makes the same mistake, the teacher may now have the will to correct, knowing that there may be consequences that will follow. Example was with the DSS in Calabar, where a teacher was teaching and punished a child, and such a teacher was taken to custody.
What kind of punishment are you talking about?
Punishment could be, you know, teachers have different, you know, most of the time people look at corporal punishment as the only punishment we have.
Those days we were flogged, you know.
Apart from flogging, you can be asked to write in position, repeating a sentence. It's a punishment. Or when others are going, you are kept back to do certain assignments in the school. There are forms of punishment. No, corrective punishment for them.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, you know, that's Comrade Calvin, what is the broad outlook? Because I asked the question of Professor Azare. The lingering impression that you get is teaching and teachers are this, they are looked down upon, and so on and so forth. But Professor Azare has provided some explanation, which indeed, if you were to look back, say, over the past 3 or 4 decades, has shown a qualitative improvement, first in the entry qualifications of those who are presenting themselves for teaching, and then also in terms of the general welfare, even though there are lingering cases of salaries being owed in some states, but it is not all across the board. And then you have the distinction between public and private schools. In other words, teachers who are engaged in the public sector and those who are also engaged in private schools. So what is the outlook for teachers? Does it remain the same dreary profession that was described, you know, sometime in the past?
No, even in the past, I don't even look at the past as very bad situation. With all the academic qualification and improvement that has occurred as a result of time and changes. But that when you now compare the way teachers are perceived in the society, do I give you an example of when you attend occasion? All right? The recognition you can give to even somebody who did not pass, who don't have any qualification, cannot be given to a teacher. And you know, these small things can affect somebody.
So you want to be recognized like high chiefs and then
Not
like
necessarily,
senators and so on?
not necessarily. In any profession you are, like you're a journalist, you pass through a teacher. And so many other people, all these senators and the rest of them, how many teachers have you heard we are giving this national merit award?
Kirian, no, Kirian, let's correct this impression.
Okay, please.
During the Second Republic, when President Shehu Shagari was head of state, the President Commander-in-Chief, one of the recipients of the national honor was his former teacher.
Okay, that is one in a million.
Shagari, I mean, I've cited that as an example.
Yeah, so many years ago.
Okay. Now let's go to Adamu Bello, the Acting Director of Professional Operations Department, Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Now, it does mean that because of your portfolio, you are close to teachers, and you understand what it means to have a quality teacher. Apart from all the platforms or programs that have been put in place over the years to have qualitative teaching profession. Now, what is your view of what the very first question that Kinsley posed as to how do you consider the status of teachers generally in Nigeria, perhaps in terms of emolument and recognition in society and what have you?
Thank you, viewers. From my point of view, as somebody from the regulatory body for teaching profession, teachers of today, they are better off in terms of when we compare the two, the past and the present, the very first teachers we look at, because when you want to make two comparisons, you look at the first and then the present situation.
Sir, I'm not stopping you. What category of teachers? You know, we have primary, secondary, and high institutions.
Basically, our major problem in this country are the basic and the post-basic. Because the people at the university level, they have their own cadre. They have protected themselves, protected their territory. Within the teaching profession, our major problem is disaggregation. If we have accepted that teaching profession belongs to all of us and we are going to operate under a single umbrella, professors in the universities and those teachers in the primary school should look at themselves as members of the same profession. But that has not been done in this country. When it comes to finding solutions, every sector separate themselves and fight for their own. Now, teachers are the basic and post-basic. To be frank, there is a big problem. In terms of quality and in terms of remunerations or packages, they are not getting the best, and they are not putting the best. Starting from even the policies that brings them up. When we come to JAM, they will tell you that 200 goes to medicine, 150 goes to this. They will come back and say the remaining, that scored 50 or 60 should go to faculties of education, and then those who score 20 should go to colleges of education. Why do we get equality here? One policy have even demeaned the teaching profession. We don't get the best, and we can't have the best. We need to change that narratives. At the basic and post-basic, there's a big challenge that we have to face. We have to be frank to ourselves.
And that is the foundation laying
Yes.
stages, you know, of a teaching profession or even grooming a child from kindergarten to when the person gets into university. Kingsley, let's take on Professor Ms. Maria, Dean, Faculty of Education. Of course, we have noted here that when you go further higher, you know, it becomes better in terms of the profession. But it's important we speak about the basic and post-basic, because that is the fundamental, that is the foundation laying stages of teaching and learning.
Yeah, I think the issue is the perception of the society. And I will give you an example of what the perception looks like. I've just finished considering the merit list for applicants into this year. And in most of our programs, those who applied are not up to 50% of our quota in our various programs. And that is to support what Alhaji Anjikwi had just said, that the general perception is what determines, which means there are fewer people interested in coming into the teaching profession. And why must that be so? It means the society there does not think it is worth it. Now, and why is it not worth it? I don't want to say there is anything wrong with the remuneration. We operate the same salary scales. We operate the same fringe benefits with other, you know, practitioners in other fields. But then, the society, one example was the way parents look at teachers. I wonder if you have your child in the police academy and then he is being punished, a parent will go there to NDA and say, why did you allow my child to be punished? But a teacher will, a parent will walk into the classroom, challenge a teacher in front of his students. That has to be stopped. And government has to come in to protect the teachers, protect their image, and protect their status. If laws are made such that if you are a parent and you confront a teacher, in fact, even if it is legal, there are procedures rather than combatantly. So these are some of the issues. And then when you look at government too, facilities, even though today we have all the monetization going all over, I remember in those days, even as far back as primary school, there were staff quarters for teachers. You cannot employ a teacher to a society or a community where it is not even motorable. You want him to go and put his best. He has no house to stay in. He cannot keep his family. I mean, these are all basic necessities that will enhance productivity. So, and we know there is nothing you can do in any society without functional education. And this functional education can only be given by teachers that are well qualified, well motivated. And so government must go beyond the normal things to make sure that these things are there, or else we'll continue to have our children in schools counting their number of years without any quality at the end of it.
I'm wondering, Professor Marisa Maria and the other guests, are we generalizing here, over-generalizing? Because we keep talking about equality. Are we talking about a dichotomy, say, between the urban schools and rural schools?
Certainly.
Between public schools and private schools?
Certainly.
Look, let's rewind. 40 years or so ago, if any person had a higher school certificate, I mean, he was a big teacher in a high school. But today, you can't have any person with a higher school certificate, that's so the otherwise known as the A-levels, teaching even in the primary school. It's the minimum you need now is the NCE.
Yes.
So we have seen the qualitative improvement, in the qualification of teachers. And I keep asking this question because, again, in the last 25 years or so, we have seen a phenomenal explosion in the number of private schools, even though some of them have challenges with their standards. But in schools, for instance, where you pay at least 100,000 or hundreds of thousands per term for your child, some of these instances you are describing do not occur. I mean, who is that teacher, who is that parent that is going to walk into a class? You don't need any new law to do that. That's already an act of trespass or an act of assault.
Thank you.
That's why the rights can be enforced. So are we overgeneralizing the situation or conditions of teachers?
We are not talking of private schools. Private schools have their ways of controlling and checkmating parents. But the public schools, particularly in the rural areas, this is where the problem is. I talk of their facilities that will attract them. Don't be surprised, and it's not overgeneralization. A teacher would be in a rural area and would only attend classes probably on the market days. And he stays 5 kilometers or even more away from the school. You remember during my days, after the normal classes from 8 to 1 or 2, you come back for evening games, you come back for prep, particularly if you are preparatory classes. But these are no more there. And why are they not there? Because the teachers are not in anywhere close to the students. Why are they not close? They don't have accommodations.
Yeah, but even in the past, I mean, again, gentlemen, Professor Azari, even in the past, if you were in the rural area, let's say this is the rural phenomenon now, or for those, the challenge that you have is that some of the teachers who are posted to rural areas opt to live in the towns.
Yes.
So by the time they compute their transportation costs, and the transportation cost, of course, it's deep into their earnings. They choose to go to school maybe twice or 3 times a week, which raises the issue of supervision.
Yes.
Because if you don't come to work when you're supposed to come to work, you are supposed to face sanctions. But in the past, if you were posted to a rural community, you live in that rural community. So what has changed? Professor Azari.
Well, I think, as you have said rightly, there are 2 issues here. One is the issue of professionalism of teaching. Definitely, we have accepted that there is great improvement in terms of making teaching a profession in Nigeria. All the other activities which we mentioned, the effort of the government in terms of providing this capacity building, in terms of the use of ICT, the training we receive from UBEC, the training we do for this sustainable development goal, are all efforts geared towards making the teaching profession a real profession. And above all, the control by the TRCM, which is the regulatory body for teachers, is making teaching a profession. There are provisions and guidelines which all teachers must comply with before they become teachers. There is the law of the government, which very soon will come into effect, that anybody without teaching qualification found in the classroom can be prosecuted. So all these are efforts to show that really teaching is becoming a very important profession in Nigeria. The other aspect is the issue of welfare, which should be separated from the issue of the professionalism. The professionalism definitely is taking shape. Even the teachers themselves, they have to be globally competitive. So they have to improve themselves in terms of qualification. Otherwise, they cannot survive. So definitely, there is great improvement and enhancement of the teaching profession, especially with the effort of the various agencies of government and the TRCN in trying to make it really a profession. But the issue of welfare is where we have, maybe we talk because of the large number of teachers. Those kind of welfare issues which we are talking, where the teachers live with the society, where when you go as a teacher, initially the headmaster, the chief of the town will provide you with accommodation and feeding and so on for other. But now, the large size of number of teachers, where you had a school, now we have over 100 schools. So definitely, it's a very, very difficult situation for the welfare of the teacher. But as the dean has said, there is the need to look through what ways can we do in order to improve the welfare, to make the teachers more attractive to their job.
All right. A number of issues have been raised in the course of this conversation, one of which is societal neglect, which is very important. Remember that we are talking about quality of teachers. And let's talk about the credential necessary, or that like a prerequisite for teaching. NCE is the least qualification for at least to teach in primary school. And we can also recall that about early this year, the government of Kaduna State organized an examination for teachers, taking questions from the same curriculum being used for the pupils, and many of them failed that test, including those who had NCE certificate. Now we're talking about quality of teachers. Now, what quality of teachers do we have that are now expected to impart knowledge, on the children? So let's get. I want to remain with you on this because you are of the Teachers Institute.
Yes,
Nigeria.
exactly. Yeah. We do training and retraining of teachers at the National Teachers Institute, and we have been provided by support from the special assistant, senior special assistant to the president on the SDG. We also get a lot of support from UBEC for the improvement of the quality of our teachers' capacity building, especially in the area of science and mathematics. We do this annually all over the country. And there are some quality mechanism evolved at every stage of the teacher training institution. Teacher training colleges, the NCEs, all these regulatory bodies provide mechanism for quality assurance and improvement of the quality of of our teachers. So as far as this is concerned, I think there is a lot of effort by the government, the regulatory bodies, and by the institution in terms of providing guidelines for the quality of teachers that are supposed to
Would you subscribe to periodic tests of teachers?
Well, of course, that is what the TRCN is doing now. That I'm sure this Saturday coming, the third test is coming for teachers. And that is what is obtained universally. That every year, teachers are subjected to certain tests so that those who do not qualify will not be given the opportunity to move. And even the head teachers and the school administrators undergo the same thing. So that's what the TRCN is doing. They did the first one, they did the second one, and the third one is coming, all to ascertain the quality of our teachers. So changes will not come immediately. But if there are mechanisms that have been developed in order to improve situation, then obviously we have to view them and we have to appreciate them and we have to see whether there is need for review from time to time of this kind of mechanism. But definitely in all the sectors of education, there are mechanisms for quality control in the education sector.
Yes, I want to come in before. You see, we have a mental mistake. And that is what is causing, like Kingsley was saying. What is the problem? We have, in those days, you have those with TC2, those with HLC and the rest of them, teaching, and it was going on well. But something happened along the line. And that is when you no longer have a teachers' academy. You know, in those days we are talking about, you have a TC2 and so grade
teachers training colleges.
Teachers training colleges where the rudiment of teaching is taught. There is a great difference between somebody who passed through all these levels to a bachelor's in education than when you go straight to a role in bachelor's of education. There is a great difference. The lecture method adopted in the university will play a great role. It is in this teachers training college that you learn how to teach. And that has accounted to what you saw then as the magic that we are making, even with lower qualification. Unlike now, where you have, even in primary school, we have those who have PhDs. But what is the outcome? What is the product that is coming from there? The issue is that they have the certificate, but don't have the ingredients to deliver the content. And that is why some of us are advocating. Can we go back and see where these mistakes started? And then we can start addressing it from that point. Dean was saying that there's no problem with remuneration. There is. Motivation is one of the criteria that you must give to get the best from somebody. A teacher that is not well remunerated certainly will not give his best. And yes.
Considering the macroeconomic challenges that the society faces. Comrade Nwankwo Kirby, you've raised a very important perspective. And I would like to bring in again Professor Maisamari, who is Dean of the Faculty of Education. Two of the very important courses usually taught in the course of education. One is history of education. The other is philosophy of education. Now, in the historical perspective that Comrade Nwankwo was trying to introduce with regard to the progression in the qualification module. In the past, if you left primary school, you went to Teachers College, and from Teachers College, you went to NCE. From NCE, you went to university. Now, Teachers Colleges were scrapped. I'm sure some Nigerians will not remember that at some point in this country, ahead of the launch of the UBE in 1976, teacher training education was made free. You were on scholarship. And if you were in class 5, that was your final year, you got paid a stipend by the government on a monthly basis. Now, what happened with regard to the alteration of this training route for teachers? As Nwankwo Kevin was saying, the teaching methods you learn, the principles and practice of education you learn in the teachers' college, these are not things that are taught in secondary schools. And by the time you enter the NCE, you are more fortified if you already had your teacher's grade 2 certificate. What went wrong, and what is it that is required for us to find our way back to ensure that at least the qualification process, training process, is such that enhances the capacity of the teachers before we get into the issues of welfare?
Well, I think the training process as we have today, there are two issues to it. One, if we look at the training in the university, and that is what we are even talking of, even at the Nigerian Academy of Education, whether we should allow the professional training of a teacher to be a postgraduate program, so that at the end of the day, you take your basic content area training in your special field like any other person. If you have been trained as a teacher of English, you have all the content area of a BA in English, and then you take your teaching professionalization training as a postgraduate program, in which case teacher education would no longer be like any first degree education. If you have 4 years to undergo a program in the university, for the teacher education, you take 5 years. That gives you enough grounding in content area knowledge, enough grounding in pedagogy. And that will improve the quality. But then the issue of going back to primary teachers grade 3, like I did, because I went through teachers grade 3, grade 2, well, it made me a better person, but I'm not too sure going back there would give us what we want, because what we really have is the motivation. I want to assure you, if you go to those who went to the custom, prison, and the police 10 years ago, 50% of them were teachers. People who withdrew their services from the various state teacher service commissions to join these organizations. Why? Because they felt they were going to fare better there. Now, what we need to do is how do we retain teachers in the teaching profession? And that's where we now have to talk. I'm happy some states are doing so well. They have enacted laws or probably implemented or provided policies that make for teacher, special teachers' salary, or they call something like, is it? No, not teacher salary. If you are posted to the rural area, you have special allowances. So all of these are to make things better and attractive. And I'm saying this not because I'm a teacher, because we realize, and every person, including government agencies, that without teachers, without sound education, the country is doomed for failure. But then, why don't you address the basics? Who provides that teaching? And get the teacher motivated, attract the best brains. I was glad. I saw a medical doctor, trained MBBS, with a note that she wants to teach in Faculty of Education. I said, why not apply to teach? We have College of Medicine. Why don't you go there? No, that she has interest. So these are the kind of things we want. That she wants to teach instructional technology in teacher education program.
Yeah, but you see, one issue that arises from all of this, it has to do, first, attraction and retention.
Yes.
So where do we have the issues now? And what tier of government is missing the point? UBEC, you mentioned UBEC. Yeah. Incidentally, we had the chief executive of UBEC with us yesterday. UBEC is a federal government intervention at the basic level to ensure that the challenges that we saw for several years with regard to basic education, those challenges were overcome. So where does the matter arise from now with regard to, first, attraction and then retention. And by the way, let's get this clear. If you are in the marketplace, we have seen challenges with various professions. There are some persons who have left journalism to go into banking, to go into telecoms, to go into the oil and gas sector. So you have this drift. People keep drifting on account of the perception that, oh, a particular job is better paid. If you were in the US, for instance, the remuneration for a teacher isn't the same as remuneration if you were on Wall Street. So, but for us, where does the challenge lie in terms of attraction and retention? Is it with the state government, is it with the federal government, or with the local government?
I think it's at all levels, as you have said. The state, because each level has its own responsibility. The state have their responsibilities in education, the federal government has their, and then the local government. So you find that, for example, if the UBEC give the matching grant to some state will not take it because they could not provide the counterpart. So you can see that that's the responsibility of the state. Because as education being the right of everybody, at least the state government should strive to make sure that they provide their counterfunding so that they get the assistance from the federal government. So at every level, the local government, the state, the federal, you find that there are certain elements that have not been fulfilled in order to take care of the welfare of the teachers.
Where does the NUT have the most challenge with regard to the tiers of government?
You see, like he stated, most of the challenges come from the states. If I think the simplest way to solve this problem is to remove education from concurrent lists. If we
and give more responsibility to the federal government?
Is it a responsibility? Of course, it is the responsibility of the federal government to educate their people. Is it not? Yes. Is it not their responsibility? So, excuse me, I'm coming. Please, can I land? Can I land?
I want to bring in, Adamu.
No, but here's, I'm sorry, Kevin.
Good point.
I'm sorry, Kirian. Calvin is making a point. Let him land. Just articulate your point.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say is that let's remove that responsibility from the state, and then remove the education from concurrent list. Allow it. Let the federal government, so that when they give a policy, it will now run down to the local government.
Okay, you have made the point. You have made the point. Let's go to get Ademo Ajinkwe Bello's view on this and other issues, because we are running a federation, right? And if you remove it from the concurrent list, it does seem that we are running.
Where do you take it to? Residual or exclusive?
That means we are beginning to run. We are beginning to run a unitary government. So let's get Ademo Bello's contribution here. We talked a lot about the teacher education content area and what is necessary to have a quality teacher that can impart knowledge. Now, with that, make reference also to some of the issues raised in the course of this conversation.
Thank you. Teacher education and the content is an issue that today we have a problem there. The problem is this. As I said earlier, when we pick the weak brains to study education, we may not get the best. The content of the teacher education is rich enough. But again, when we come to executing them, we have a lot of challenges in terms of distorted program in terms of the calendar of the year, strikes and all this. Learners are not getting the best from the required contents. We teach in most of the tertiary institutions teaching for certification. They don't teach to get the best. in the sense that it still boils to the commitment, remunerations, and the way teachers' perceptions are taken. I think it is from this point of view that teaching profession is coming in at this point through the various agencies in terms of training and retraining to fill up these gaps.
Oh, okay. But I'm wondering, are we making a meal out of what is apparently a recent policy? Because the policy, let's say JAM, for instance, that's JAM, that's the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, which conducts the UTME, has this segregation. If you score a certain, because on account of the unified tertiary matriculation exams, if you score so much, you go to university. If you score that much, you go to Polytechnic, or you go to College of Education. But that wasn't always so. That's just a recent phenomenon. Now, is that a problem that we need to be concerned about?
No, but I think this year that has been corrected. Even though it seems the cutoff marks have been lowered, but it has not been lowered just for particular programs. It's been lowered generally to say, well, from this, you are free to admit. But again, JAM...
Give us the numbers. Give us the numbers.
Well, I know the previous year it was 120, which a lot of people objected. But even the 160 given this year, and I remember, and that is the directive we are implementing, each faculty, based on your carrying capacity, pick your cutoff point for your own program. It's not general to every university. You can make your own.
Okay. Well,
so, based on your carrying capacity, based on the applicants, so that you can sieve the best, you pick your own cutoff point.
So, all right, gentlemen, at this point we'll have to take a short break, and it is understandable that there is what the lawyers would like to call lacuna somewhere along the line when it comes to teaching profession in Nigeria. We have heard how it all started, and at a point when we derailed and the profession pummeled, especially with respect to our societal perception. We can recall that when in the 80s, when the government was giving car loans to different strata of servants in Nigeria, teachers were giving money to purchase the car called Ladder then, which was the lowest level of...
That was in the 70s.
In the 70s, okay. They're going to buy, Ladder as against those who are buying 504 SR and all of that.
You have to be a graduate to get 504.
No, but
504L. But if you got Ladder or you got Avenger.
But Ladder was for teachers especially. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for your contributions on this program so far. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are tackling the issue of teaching profession in Nigeria. Now we have a special package on sports and sporting activities. Let's get that before we return to our conversation for this morning.
From the concurrent list to the exclusive, Professor Dean of Faculty of Education at the University of Abuja says, listen, that will result in over-centralization. That's an issue for us to return to. But in the meantime, there's the issue about certifying and licensing teachers. And that's where Adamu Bello will come in again. What are the criteria for the licensing of teachers? And what is the validity period of a license? And how do you ensure that the license doesn't just become another driver's license where quacks, have access to it and they are causing all kinds of disasters on the road?
Thank you. The licensing of qualified teachers is done in this way. When teachers graduate from teacher training institutions, there is a synergy between the teacher training institutions and the council and the regulatory body. After students or graduates leave the institution, what we do right now is we go to after graduation, we go to the institutions to give graduates counseling and guidance on professional consciousness. We certify them and induct them. They are certified. Then after the certification, they apply for the license. If you have your first degree or whatever degree in teacher training, if you have the skills of teaching, the pedagogical skill, you are qualified to be certified and licensed. And the licensing period, the certification is once in lifetime. But the licensing is given and it expires after every 3 years. It's renewable after 3 years.
And then they will return to the licensing office.
They will return, yes. We renew them. We have offices in all the 36 states of the Federation, and that one is being controlled at the various stages.
Now, sir, in terms of renewal,
yeah.
and or perhaps let me take you back to the criteria that Kingsley wanted you to talk about. After graduation, perhaps you do some investigations in the schools from where the people graduated and certify that they are actually graduated. And you invite them and induct them. I'm going to a point. I'm going to a place. Now, we have other regulatory bodies in other professions in this country, like COREN, in which case, before you become COREN certificated as an engineer, you have to sit for an examination. Now, the question is just graduating from your school enough to earn you a license, or would you subject them to another central examination that will convince you that these people have the right quality to impart knowledge on our children? If you finish with that, perhaps Professor Mesamari could also come in there.
Thank you. Initially, when we took off, we do certify without any examination. But at a later stage, it was observed that there were prevalence of incompetency within the system. From those who have both the teacher training certificates and that of the TRCN. It was after that it was observed that we need to introduce professional qualifying exam to test the practical competence of various teachers before they are being certified and licensed. So based on that, that is why the professional qualifying exam is now on board. Before any teacher is being certified and licensed, she must pass the professional qualifying exam conducted by Teachers Registration Council. It is done 2 times in a year, May and October. And the other one is, there is professional qualifying exam conducted to graduating students of various institutions. Before they leave the institutions, we collaborate with the institutions and then we do same. They are also given the exam to pass.
Which institutions are you referring to? Because, I mean, that's...
Colleges of education, faculties and institute of education graduates, teacher training institutions.
Do you still have teacher training colleges in the country? Producing TC2?
I think no.
To universities.
We institute and we don't have.
Universities.
Yes.
Institutes of education.
No, when you say teacher training faculties, what do you mean by that, Professor?
I said teacher training institutions. Teacher training institutions in the universities and colleges of education.
No, when you say teacher training institutes, you can have an institution. You can have, and just a minute, you can have an institute of education in a university.
Yes, and faculty of education.
It's a teacher training platform.
Yes.
You have a faculty of education, which is a teacher training, training platform. Colleges of education. And then colleges of education, you also have them science and technical. All these parts,
all are part. And then departments of education in polytechnics.
Okay. Polytechnics also have Department of Education.
Yes. They do.
All right, Professor Mesamari, let's have your take on this.
I think he's made the points. It's not just when you finish from a university or a college of education that you are certified. You are expected to sit a teacher professional qualification examination organized by TRCN. at the end of your training. And the renewal is also to ensure that you keep abreast with your knowledge so that you just don't go out and be practicing having forgotten everything that's supposed to be in you as a teacher. So that is the essence of the renewal. I remember as a committee of deans of Nigerian universities and faculties of education, we also participated in that program and in generating the questions and what have you that will serve as a data bank for administration subsequently to prospective graduates. But the issue I want to comment on is this issue of whether the certificate is going to be another driver's license. And I think the basic issue is ability to control who owns the certificate and who uses the certificate. And I want to refer to what happened in Kaduna. Most of those teachers that were assumed to have failed examinations, did they take time to find out whether they actually went for the training themselves or they were using other people's certificates? And if they were not the real people that were trained, holding the certificates and using the certificates, who brought them in? And that goes back to recruitment process. And that goes back to supervision. Because there are supposed to be supervisors in schools. You go to a school, you observe a teacher, you find he's performing below standard. The next thing is to inquire, where did you train? Who trained you? And we would apprehend the culprits. And these are not done.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, gentlemen. Let me chip in this joke.
Okay.
Even in the past, in the 70s and in the 80s, when state governments mounted Operation Show Your Certificate, on the day the inspectors are coming, some teachers, will take off, and that will be the last time you will see them, because the certificate they
now,
to.
Comrade, Kevin, now, considering the position of Professor Mary on this, how do teachers take all these measures now being put in place to see how we can have qualitative teachers?
Well, taking our instance from Kaduna saga, you see, like the prof said, at the point of entry, who brought these people? And that leads us to politicization of teaching.
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm coming.
Let me remind you something before you continue.
Okay.
That at a point in this country, we had a shortage of teachers. Yes. In fact, some states were cried out or asking for people to come. Anybody who can teach to come.
It's still like that now. It's still like that. But let's finish with this Kaduna saga and then the porosity in entrance into teaching profession. You see, like 2019 is just by the corner. There are people who have worked as thugs or campaign whatever for these politicians. At the end of the day, because teaching is the only place that anybody goes in, as a playing ground. These people who helped in politicking are drifted. Remember, the teachers are not in charge of recruitment. And that was one of the issues we raised in the Kaduna issue. We asked, at the point of entry, who employed these people? Because we discovered that most of them were messengers. Because they said there is shortage of teachers, they were uploaded to teach. And at the end of the day, you now want to send them, these teachers do not know how to teach. This teacher doesn't have certificate. You know that they didn't have certificate. Why did you employ them? So we have to reduce politics, remove politics entirely from education.
And, okay, thank you. Mr. Mary, you will come in here now. Yes. With respect to two of the issues that he raised now, that teachers do not participate in recruitment. And again, how do we now create awareness? Because public perception of teachers in the past has made it so difficult for people to even take up to that profession.
Coming back to what comrades have said, when there is declared vacancy in the state or at the local government, the chairman of the local government and his councillors will sit down and divide the appointments, and every one of them brings whatever he brings, and nobody questions that. That was exactly what happened with the Kaduna issue. So the issue is we just have to get the political will to checkmate this, because these politicians, they are too crafty. They are just too crafty for us. And a strong position has to be taken.
Well, yeah, what the instrumentality they normally use for this is the SUBEB, that is the State Universal Basic Education Board.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they
are all together.
They are appointees.
The head of the SUBEBs are political appointees.
Yes. We understand that, but what can be done, Professor Azare, what can be done with regard to a more streamlined recruitment process to ensure that the dregs don't just get into don't get recruited on account of the fact that they are jobbers?
Sorry, sir. Let me just give you this hint. The Minister, Federal Ministry of Education, both of them have given us the matching order by January to constitute a task force and go out like when the Professor Akinyele used to do. We go to classroom to check, apprehend, and prosecute. The law gives us that order.
You want to do that in federal institutions or
all the institutions from public to private?
They are one about the states, the state governments.
Professor Azare, let's have your take on this.
Well, the issue is that guidelines for recruitment of every civil servant is available, including teachers. The only problem is the implementation. And then the right people who are supposed to be on the panel for the interview and for the recruitment possibly are not consulted. Well, I mean, we have so many good policies and ideas, but always problem of implementation. Everybody is lamenting the issue of implementation of programs, ideas, and policies. Policies on recruitment and procedures are laid down for every civil servant, including the teachers. They are there in the Ministries of Education, in the SUBEB, in UBEC, and so many other places related to the issue. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that we implement the guidelines according to how they are specified. Who are the people to be represented during the interview, during the selection and recruitment of teachers, including the teachers' union.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Adamu Bello did say that these politicians are too crafty for us to handle. Okay, now let's go to the tweets now. Many Nigerians are beginning to respond to this conversation. And here I have Dele Jack Solomon, who says it is worrisome in Nigeria that teaching profession has moved from the foreground to the background, which of course the aftermath is corruption. There is need for the review of our school curriculums, overhaul the education structures and infrastructure, improve quality of teaching and staff welfare, and inject more funds to the sector by government and NGOs.
This is coming from Festus Akimboye. It says the teaching profession is in crisis in Nigeria, where anybody can be a teacher due to a severe shortage of qualified teachers and lack of professional development in the profession. Increased funding of our schools and paying teachers well are some of the solutions.
Okay, now, Comrade Tomori Abdul, he said, no teacher, no nation. Honestly, Nigerian teachers deserve their reward on earth. Let government take action. Happy Teachers Day. You recall also in the past that used to say that teachers, teachers' reward is in heaven. So that's how much this profession has been degraded by the society.
Well, not necessarily, because as we also said, teachers were also highly respected because of the quality of moral instruction they passed on and the intercessory role they also played.
It all waned with time. People
it waned because of the complexity of the society and the dysfunctionalities that also crept in. Well, let's take this tweet again from another one from Comrade Tomori Abdul. Now, the teaching profession repositioning should start from admission process of Nigerian colleges of education, and hence the profession will be in a much better state.
Now, Sani Michael Omakoji says in advanced economies, teachers are adored and adequately compensated in terms of remuneration. But here we are that in some states, teachers are not being paid for many months. Now, how can teachers do well in this situation?
Sikiru tweets, now teachers are the teachers of all professions. They are to be honored, but they are not recognized in society because of their low salaries compared to other professions.
All right, AU Tarang, all these talks on teachers are not respected in society. They are not delivering centered on the emoluments. Pay teachers above the salaries of the PA of a senator, and improvements will follow naturally.
How much does the PA of a senator earn? Some of the workers in the National Assembly who are aides to the lawmakers, they were trying to organize a protest some weeks ago on account of the fact that they had not been paid.
But if you know the
all right,
you know,
how much? Yes. No. It's not for me to ask them. The report was there as to what they were owing. But how much does the PA of a? That's not. I mean, that's so that we don't exaggerate the fact. But if you say, look, slash the emolument of a senator or slash the emolument of a House of Reps member, then that's understandable. Okay. You know, or take a look at the wages and incomes spread across the country and then reaggregate all of that. But not the PA of a senator.
And these PAs perhaps are considering what their superiors take home, right? You know, because if you're a PA to someone, it's as if you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, they are looking at it from the point of view of what do we take home? And what they take home presently may be above what teachers take home.
But that is sure.
So that is why.
No, but again, the kind of risk, the person, the PA will end up for 4 years, maximum 8 years, and some of them have already lost their primaries, so that means that thing is going to end. But the teacher remains in the job. It's a choice. So you have a choice of continuing emolument, you know, Amogbala has this. Amogbala has this tweet. It says, God bless all teachers around the globe. No teacher, no doctor, no teacher, no pharmacist, no teacher, no engineer, no teacher, no journalist, no teacher, no accountant, no teacher, no banker, no teacher, no president, no governor, no teacher, no living. God bless all teachers once again.
All right, the concluding one now from Omobola, he says, teachers must be adequately rewarded in other climes. Australia in particular pays teachers more than doctors. That's what I was referring to when we were talking about, my friend was talking about qualification. You know, teachers are revered in other parts of the world, but here in Nigeria, reverse is the case. We must pay teachers handsomely to get the best of them.
Let's get this. Let's sort this out. No, Prof, don't bother. Thanks a lot. Don't bother. I was going to say, look, if the campaign is improve on the remuneration of teachers, now how do you actualize that? Because as you can see, in some section of private education provision, the remuneration of teachers is different from the public sector. Are there lessons to learn from the remuneration of teachers in the private sector? Because the fees you pay per term will be such as to make the environment conducive for learning and also to reward the teachers appropriately. So how then do you target that aspect of improved remuneration? We know, for instance, the two profs are here, ASU waged advocacy for many years with regard to remuneration for lecturers in the universities, and they were able to get something. So lecturers complain less now, except for some other areas that they'll talk about, and then they threaten strike once in a while. So how do we achieve improved remuneration for teachers at the basic level and at the secondary school level?
You see, when you look at the budget to education, you now see there is also discrimination again between the tertiary and the other two levels. Certainly, all the money budgeted, most of them, in short, over 70% of money budgeted for education goes to universities and colleges of education.
Whose budget are you talking about? Is it the federal government budget or the state budget?
The federal government budget. Look, even...
But states and local governments also have responsibility for education.
Yes, they have. But they have intervention from so many places, the universities. And you remember, in the states, there is free education for primary and secondary. And this free education, there is, the parents has taken it in a different balance altogether. And for that reason, they don't give any helping hand, participatory. In the public school I'm talking about. If it is the public, the private, it's a different ballgame. Whatever fee you are giving, you pay. But in public schools, you don't collect anything. In most states, you don't collect anything. But the state cannot provide the teaching aids. No facilities.
So would you want fees to be introduced?
No, but I think the basic
even if the fees is not introduced, let the state governments have that political will to invest.
We're talking about the sources. We're talking about the sources for investment.
Now, Kevin, sorry, let's return to Billy because he's been itching to say something here. I think what one could drive home from Kevin's position here is that ultimately the national budget on education is tied to other educational budgets down the line. Yes. And this has been historical in this country, that from 1999, our budgeting structure, when it comes to education, science, technology, and innovation, they are in the bottom. But what bothers many, including myself, is that what happens elsewhere, especially let's use America because we're using their presidential system of government. Number one in the budgeting structure is defense, followed by science, technology, and innovation, and education. Ours comes last. So it's worrisome. Now, Prof, what's your take?
Thank you. The best way to solve this problem or try to solving this problem is this. From at the federal level, for instance, there is what we called teacher development fund accounts. This is a new innovation which is being thought out of the box. There is a committee going on now to create this account for education, to finance education, because the government cannot be able to carry this load of education. So by the time this fund account is created for funding education, and it is financed and managed well, we may have a leeway. And again, if education is declared emergency area for now, all the revenue generating agencies within the education system, they will stop paying the 25% to the central post and pay it into that account. And it will solve or take us to the next step. When the situation improves, we return to status quo. But for now,
which fund are you talking about? Is it the ETF or the Education Trust Fund? Which Educational Development Fund?
Is a teacher development fund.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, Adamu Bello. You're talking about teacher development fund. My question to Comrade Kelvin had to do with how do you source the funding to improve remuneration for teachers? Now, if we are having what is apparently unworkable now, that state governments are declaring free education or pretending to be paying WAEC fees for students and so on and so forth, might the introduction of some measure of fees boost the revenues of the state government as to now enable the state government to translate that into better remuneration or regular remuneration for their teachers? Professor Masari.
Well, I think the point is what you are hinted. There is a little bit of hypocrisy in governance. You want to pay the WAEC of a child that has not been taught, only to give the impression that you are sponsoring their examination. But you've not given them what it takes to write the examination. So it's like putting the cart before the horse. So to me, it's hypocrisy. Address the root cause of failures rather than pretending you are taking responsibility for their examinations. So that is one of them. And then the second is the issue of priority in budgeting. Government is not interested in paying remunerations, paying fringe benefits, the one where they will give contracts and show projects and then probably, I'm very sorry, take their own kickbacks.
Yeah, all right, sir. We're going to.
A very important point as regard to your question is that it seems from the foregoing that there is some misunderstanding of responsibilities by each tier of government.
All right, so we're going to stop it here, actually, you know, because time is not on our side any longer. I think we have been able to deliberate on this to a great extent. Perhaps there could be more programs on this particular topic because it's very, very crucial. But we all have an understanding now that there is a problem somewhere along the line in the education sector with respect to the teaching profession. All right, at this point, we'd like to thank Professor Garba Azare, Director General, National Teachers Institute of Nigeria. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much
for your incisive contribution.
Yeah.
And Professor Ms. Marie, Dean, Faculty of Education, University of Abuja. It's also a pleasure having you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Comrade Nwankwo Kevin, you wanted remuneration to be improved for teachers, and that will come. My father didn't have it before he left, but he have it. All right, thank you very much for coming, Comrade Nwankwo Kevin, National Deputy President, Nigerian Union of Teachers, NUT. And now Adamu Ajinkwe Bello, Acting Director, Professional Operations, Department of Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Thank you indeed for your positions on this topic.
Thank you, and welcome.
All right, well, on Good Morning Nigeria, but just about to go, and let's see the meteorological agency for the weather forecast for the rest of today.
A warm welcome. Climate change could be referred to as a change in weather conditions over a long period of time. Now, this poses serious effect to human health, especially that of children. Hence, it will be a good idea to teach our children the concept of climate change and its effect. Just start with something tangible that they could understand. For Friday's weather forecast, in the morning over the northeast, we expect cloudy skies with sunshine intervals, while over the northwest, thunderstorms are anticipated, and the central region extending down to the eastern half of the southern cities. Then cloudy skies are expected over the southwestern part of the country. Then progressing into the day, there are better prospects of rainfall activities in the southern region, while scattered thunderstorms are expected over the central cities. Over the north, we expect wider coverage of weather activities compared to morning hours. I am Imara Joyce and Tom. Thanks for watching and see you again.
All right, so that does it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We hope you enjoyed the program and indeed all the programs that we've had this week. That's the last for us. For this week, my name is Kingsley Osadolo. Good Morning Nigeria returns on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, have a lovely weekend.
And I am Kirian Umaya. It's been nice having you on this beat today. Let's do that again on Monday when we return with a fresh edition of the program. Goodbye.